The following featured presentation is part of the Skywalking Network.
This is what you can look forward to on episode 492 of Skywalking Through Neverland.
He told me with a Soto voice very quietly, and you're going to introduce Boba Fett. And he said it like with great degree of importance and drama.
But someone has sued for like getting a kid hooked on a show?
Yeah. George was not going to do Hanna-Barbera's version.
Yeah, because
Right.
Chewbacca would have looked like Hong Kong Phooey.
Very much a business book as well. You can learn a lot about business. Like anyone in business school should be
Yeah.
reading your book. What is your favorite Care Bear?
Are you ready?
Off to Neverland.
Here we go!
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome. Disneyland is your land.
When I first made Star Wars, everybody in Hollywood said, well, this is a movie Disney should have made.
You're more than just fans. You're family.
Best day ever!
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
Hey.
When you use a bird to write with, it's called tweeting.
When we visit the world of Disney, we never grow old. It's a Peter Pan, Never land that keeps us young in heart.
This is Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi, and you are skywalking through Neverland. I have a good feeling about this.
Hey, Skywalkers, and happy Life Day week! Are you like us, and are you continuing to celebrate this red-robed holiday all week long? Did you watch the Star Wars Holiday Special to kick things off? Do you want to know more about the animated Faithful Wookiee short? Then you came to the right place. But until then, we want to welcome you back to Skywalking Through Neverland. I am Richard Woloski, but now everyone please say hello to my sweetie wife Sarah, who got 8 hours of sleep this last week.
Yeah, over the whole week.
Yes, you're running on fumes.
I was, yes. But now we're back and we're ready for a great week. We're going to have lots of content this week. And in fact, this is one of them. So welcome, Skywalkers. We are your enthusiastic podcast destination for the many decades of your Star Wars, Disney, Marvel, and Life Day fandom. So imagine a big Wookiee hug from us and a little sprinkle of pixie dust for our family of Skywalkers. Now we are live on the Skywalking Through Neverland YouTube channel right now. So thank you. We love that you subscribe to us and click that little bell for notifications because we sometimes go live at random times of the week and you guys are all tuned in. So we love it.
All right, now, last couple of weeks, we really haven't been talking about our YouTube subscribers because they've been yo-yoing.
Oh, no.
So let's get back in this bandwagon because last time we left off, we had 9144 YouTube subscribers.
Okay.
And we asked for a couple more. So guess where we are now?
9146.
No, we are at
9145.
9145.
Oh, no. And we've gone up some and we've gone down some.
We went
right?
down like 10.
Oh.
Why? I don't know. Please, someone tell me why do people unsubscribe? But then it went back up, and now we're one more than where we were last time. So I call that a win.
That's right. Wow.
All right, now we are being sponsored by Small World Vacations, and they are a diamond-level Disney vacation planner travel agency that can help you book your trip to a Disney park around the world or on a Disney cruise. And best of all, this service is free of charge. So head over there to smallworldvacations.com for a no-obligation price quote and tell them Skywalking Through Neverland sent you and give them a wishful Happy Life Day.
They'll know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are recording this episode from Long Beach, California on November 18th, 2024. So Richard, what happened today in Star Wars history?
Well, this was a big week for Star Wars on TV. Now, back on November 17th, 1978, we got the Star Wars Holiday Special. Then the next day, on the 18th of 1978, November 18th, 1978, Carrie Fisher hosted Saturday Night Live.
The same year?
The same year, the day after the holiday special. So once again, this was a big week for Star Wars on TV.
That is amazing.
I recall when it was first on, I had my little tape recorder. And I recorded it on a cassette tape because that's how we could watch or listen to things again and again on a cassette tape. And a friend of mine, I had a sleepover party because of this. So this was like a big event, and my friend kept like laughing or talking, and I was furious.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, Rich, we want to enjoy it. No, enjoy it later on.
Laugh later.
During the playback, enjoy it then. Okay, right now,
fun.
I want to preserve this because who knows when we'll ever see this or hear this again. This was big time stuff since Star Wars was combined with a show made for adults. Even though kids watched it, but this was an adult-oriented show, and Star Wars was a part of it. This was a crossover on a whole different level. Mm-hmm. And this was something that made adults go, is this Star Wars thing a thing for adults as well? Even though every adult loved Star Wars, but did they see, I don't know, I'm asking if anyone knows the answer, did adults now see Star Wars as not something just mainly for kids?
When okay, this is random, but when did Blues Brothers come out? Because I know
1980.
Okay, so this was before that. All right.
Yes, so
Carrie Fisher was pretty much just known for
Princess Leia
at this point.
It was the movie Shampoo.
Yeah.
And then Star Wars.
Okay.
Now, oddly enough, the Blues Brothers made their debut on this very episode.
What?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Well, wow, that's crazy.
Now, within the show, Carrie Fisher comes out to do her monologue as Princess Leia in the first sketch, Beach Blanket Bimbo from Outer Space, and she joins a beach party in what now? How does she attend?
A gold bikini.
She enters in a gold bikini. Now, this whole sketch was a play on the beach party movies of the 1960s with Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon.
Okay.
But yeah, she comes in a gold bikini.
Yeah.
Her Princess Leia's first gold bikini. And at Celebration 2012, I saw a cosplayer dressing as Princess Leia. She dressed as Princess Leia with a beach ball in that same gold bikini.
Yeah.
This was a deep, deep, deep cut. And I said, hey, do you know the song? And she did this whole 5-minute song. The Obi-Wan Kenobi, Obi-Wan Kenobi. She had all the lyrics, all the mannerisms down. This was before, we all had phones in our pockets.
Yeah.
So no one got this on tape or on their phone.
Mm-hmm.
But a tip of the cap to that cosplayer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's not any good footage on YouTube. So right now we're kind of showing pictures, but there's no good footage on YouTube. So we'll need to change all that.
Because I remember seeing it, and it must have been just on YouTube that I saw it.
There were different collections of SNL seasons, so you may have seen it. Someone had brought it over at one point. I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen this.
Okay.
But this was a classic episode. These were the only Star Wars references in the whole show. All right, with that, let's continue our Life Day celebration with Michael Hirsh from Nelvana Studio.
Boba Fett is Darth Vader's right-hand man. I'm afraid this whole adventure has been an Imperial plot.
We'll meet again, friend.
It's November, which means it's time to honor and celebrate the Star Wars Holiday Special. One part of the special was key in forwarding the next chapter of the Star Wars saga. The story of the faithful Wookiee animated short gave Boba Fett his on-screen introduction, and it gave Disney Plus a way to ease new viewers into this classic Star Wars opus.
Story of the Faithful Wookiee was produced by the animation studio Nelvana with its co-creator Michael Hirsh. Michael Hirsh went on to create and produce over 6,000 episodes of children's programming, including Inspector Gadget, Care Bears, and even more holiday specials.
His new memoir, Animation Nation: How We Built a Cartoon Empire, is now available and is a perfect gift for the animation buff this holiday season. Hey, Michael!
Hey, Richard and Sarah.
Well, thank you for coming on to celebrate Life Day. So, got to ask you, how did you celebrate Life Day yesterday?
You know, it's a good question. I think I relaxed.
Uh-oh.
That's my best method.
Uh-oh, you froze.
Uh-oh, you froze. And that's why we edit.
The way that I celebrated Life Day was by freezing.
Just like Han Solo would have done it.
After he got the terrible plague from the Faithful Wookiee cartoon.
That talisman curse gets you every time.
Well, we're so excited to speak with you after reading your book, and there's lots to talk about, but we really have to jump right into the story of the Faithful Wookiee.
Okay.
And you go over the journey as to how you got on George Lucas's radar in your book, but for our listeners, can you give us a summary of that?
Sure. So Nelvana was a company that I started with two other partners, Patrick Lubear and Clive Smith. And we had just done our first fully animated show called A Cosmic Christmas. And it was basically the story of three spacemen who follow a star and land on Earth and learn the meaning of Christmas because they come at Christmas time. And the show was distributed in the US through syndication. And what that meant was we had to put an ad hoc network together of 190 stations that would run it. And they would all run it on a different day within a 2-week block, a different time period. So it becomes very hard to promote. But we were very fortunate. We had a great distributor called Viacom, and they managed to get us a big national rating, even though we were in this syndicated ad hoc network. But that made it hard to watch. So I was totally shocked when a few months after it aired, or actually even a month after it aired, I got a call from Lucasfilm asking if we were the company that did A Cosmic Christmas. And of course, I affirmed that we were. And then they asked if I would fly down to meet with George at their studio. And he had an animation project that he wanted to discuss. And so obviously I went, but we were a relatively new company and we didn't have a lot of money. So even just scraping a few dollars together to be able to fly down to San Francisco and rent a car and drive out to see George was a big deal for us. We had like one credit card. It was the early days of credit cards. And so this credit card meant, I had to fly Air Canada, so I did. It meant I had to use a certain rental car company because that card only worked with that one company. Same thing when it was going to be time to spend a night in the hotel that night and then fly back the next day. So, I basically fly out. I follow the instructions I've been given. I, rent a car, drive to Marin County to San Rafael, go to a suburban shopping mall. I've been told there's a telephone booth in the corner because this is, of course, before mobile phones. It's at least 8 years before the big block mobile phones. And so I, have coins with me because I've been told, make sure you have coins for the phone. And I put them in and dial the number. And then somebody says to me, well, look straight ahead. And we're in the middle of the parking lot. And they were in a little red brick building that was in the middle of the parking lot and had no signage, didn't identify Lucasfilm, didn't identify ILM, didn't identify Star Wars. There was no identity. And the person said, well, just walk over here. So I walk over there.
At this point, where red flags going up, like maybe I'll get back in my car and go back home.
No, because this is before. If it were today, you'd have red flags. But back then, no, I was totally. And I knew that I had spoken to Lucasfilm, so it was fine. But so I'm doing this walk. I get there, and it's almost the equivalent of a speakeasy from the Prohibition era, where a small door opens. And they identify me, and then I am able to go in. But I'm told I have to cover my eyes because they're doing a special effects shot for The Empire Strikes Back. So I walk through this room where they're shooting a model for The Empire Strikes Back. My eyes are closed, but obviously I sneak a peek, and because who wouldn't? And I get into a room, and then they tell me, well, the bad news is that George has changed his mind. He's not coming into the studio. You're going to have to go to his house. So now I'm in my rental car following one of the production people to George's house. And at the time, he had kind of what I think was a World War I relic cannon in front of his house. So I know I'm in the right place because it's Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
And so, I meet with George and we have a really good meeting. And the fact that we're an independent company, not from LA, is a big deal to him because, he's from San Francisco and really wasn't a big fan of doing everything in LA, which really was the industry norm. And he also was a fan of the National Film Board of Canada. And so, we had this affinity through those two things to start off with. And then he did like Cosmic Christmas and its fresh treatment. And so, I told him a bit about our studio and how we did all the animation in Canada, which at that point, pretty much most of the American studios were going to Asia at this point. And animation had really been allowed in the 60s and 70s to deteriorate to the point where there weren't that many drawings in a show. But we had pretty full animation and, it was all done in our own studio. And again, that spoke to him and it was something that he respected. And so we got the gig, right? But at the end of, him describing the cartoon we would make, we talk about style. And I think I raised the fact that we're fans of a French artist named Mobius and thought that would be a good style for the first Star Wars cartoon. And he agreed. He thought that was a good look and we would do that. So that was the look decided. And then he told me with a Soto voice very quietly, and you're going to introduce Boba Fett. And he said it like with great degree of importance and drama. And I'm thinking, well, I don't know who this Boba Fett is, but that's great. We're going to introduce Boba Fett. And of course, as time has gone on, Boba Fett has become a big part of the Star Wars lore. And so that became, people started to seek us out again, 20, 30 years later as Boba Fett became a more important character in the Star Wars legacy.
Did he give you any background on Boba Fett, such as he's the new bad guy for The Empire Strikes Back? He's this bounty hunter, very Lee Van Cleef style?
Yeah, so he told us he was the bounty hunter, and that was enough for that moment. And what we got from so Joe Johnson, and my memory is that Joe actually wrote the script for The Faithful Wookiee. George wrote the introduction because I complained to him that I felt that while it was good to cut into action, that because it was part of a 2-hour live action show, people needed a little bit of introduction to get into the story. And he agreed and wrote the homage to Star Trek that begins it, right? Mm-hmm. And, we had a great experience working with him. The cartoon, met our sort of desire in terms of what we were trying to do with it. And, George was happy with it. And so for a period of time, we kept up a good relationship where he was mentoring the studio and myself and giving us advice and looking at things that we were looking at doing and giving us his input.
At what stage did he bring you in? Was it before the production of the Star Wars Holiday Special? Was it at the end?
No, it was in production. And we didn't have much time to do the cartoon. So my memory is that we probably had about 5 months, but because it had never been designed, right? Star Wars had never been animated before. There was a lot of design work because you were going to get, Luke, Leia, Han Solo, Darth Vader, R2 and C-3PO. You were going to get major characters who were going to appear. So there was a lot of pre-production work that had to get done. So we kept up a relationship, and eventually when he sold his first Saturday morning cartoons, Ewoks and Droids, he chose us to do both. So it was a great relationship.
Now, CBS, they pushed for Hanna-Barbera to do the story of the Faithful Wookiee, right? As much as I love Hanna-Barbera, Nelvana was the obvious choice.
When it came to Faithful Wookiee, CBS, who was the network that played that show, they wanted Hanna-Barbera because Hanna-Barbera did almost all the animation for CBS, and they did almost the animation for ABC and NBC. They were doing about 70%. Filmation was doing the other 20, 25%, and then there was the odd project that would go to Sid Marty Krofft or somebody. But by and large, the go-to studio in Hollywood was Hanna-Barbera. And that was the last thing. George was not going to do Hanna-Barbera's version.
Yeah, because
Right.
Chewbacca would have looked like Hong Kong Fooey.
Yeah, and by the way, they probably could have done a great job, but would they? Like they could have, but would they? You know, that would have been the issue. So
Right.
in this case, George got what he wanted. He chose the studio. We delivered a look that wouldn't have been what Hanna-Barbera would have chosen, and he, managed to sort of like part of the holiday special because at first, he was not a fan of the variety show, right?
Now, even though the variety show was the go-to structure for shows back
day.
then, everyone thought, every special that came on, well, we're gonna do a variety show. That's what is done at this point. But yeah, I can see Lucas going, no, that's not Star Wars.
Right. Right. Yeah, exactly.
But he was talked into it, and he did it. And the producers were, for the variety part, the live action part, were Smith Hemian, who were like the top, variety producers in America. They won Emmys every year, so he looked like he was in safe hands, but it was so, I don't think 20th Century Fox, who was Lucas's, partner at that time in the early days on Star Wars, understood what they had with Star Wars. And I don't think that the toy people understood the uniqueness of Star Wars. It's only time that has really made that clear.
Absolutely.
Which is odd because this is what was at the very end of the year-and-a-half Star Wars run. It had just left the theaters a week before the Star Wars holiday special. So at that point, I think they should have had enough numbers to go, yeah, I think we're onto something here.
Right.
We're good.
Oh no, they knew they were onto something, but they didn't quite understand that it was
the legacy.
It was a masterpiece and a legacy, etc. But
Yes.
and I know that the performers, really could not stand working on the TV special. And in those days, you were either a TV actor or a movie actor. There really was a distinction. You were a director in movies or a director in TV. Like people didn't cross over the same way that they now do. Mm-hmm. And so that was, I'm sure, part of the issue because you had these big movie stars who were in this holiday special and they just didn't feel it was true to their characters.
Right. Well, you directed the voice sessions for the animated short with Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, and Carrie Fisher.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about these recording sessions? Did they, how were they there?
It's interesting. So Mark Hamill had been an animation voice in his youth, and he later did many more voices. He was ready to give me every take I need. And in animation, you typically, when you're getting the voices, because you're animating the voices are a key part of putting the performance over to the audience, right? Having them understand what the character's feeling, because you're not making an animated movie with a, let's call it, in those days, it might have been a $30 million budget or 40. This was a $100,000 10-minute short, right? So you're putting the best quality in you can, but you've only got so much time and money to put on the screen. So the voice performance is critical to the successful performance of the cartoon. So you try to get acting that's very over the top in cartoons, right? It's rarely just flat. And Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher really knew their characters fully, and they just did their lines, and they wouldn't give anything beyond the right Han Solo approach, the right Leia. Now, the great thing about Mark Hamill giving us all is that was the spirit of his character, full of energy, young, whippersnapper, trying to make his way in the world. And that came across with his performance. He really put a lot into his performance. And the others were great, but just came in and did their part and left, right? It was just a few minutes and gone. Whereas Hamill wanted to stick around and do lots of voices because for him, that was fun.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned in your book that Anthony Daniels as well was also very good at the voice acting.
Well, and Anthony is a great voice actor, right? And it's strange because when he was originally hired, right? Remember, he was hired to be in a way, the mime, the actor in the costume, and not the voice. They tried all sorts of voices.
Yeah, he was hired just to be the performance artist in the outfit.
That's right.
And then another comedian was going to come and do the used car salesman take on 3PO, which I never saw.
He is so perfectly C-3PO. And so he was able to nail every take very easily too. And because he did so much voice acting on the BBC in London, it was easy to get a great performance from him.
Did they all record together or one at a time, the way traditional animation is done?
So Carrie, Mark, and Harrison all recorded together, and Anthony was in London when we did it.
How about James Earl Jones?
They sent that to us separately, so they got him where he was. I don't know where he was at the time, but he didn't have that many lines in it.
I see why they call you the best bounty hunter in the galaxy.
There's always been a debate about who voiced Boba Fett, and we just had John Celestri on the show a little while back, and he did confirm that it was Don Franks. Can you second that confirmation?
Yes.
We'll meet again, friend.
And Don Franks was a regular in a lot of Nelvana shows. So he did our villain in Rock and Rule, which was a feature film we did a few years after that.
He then came back to voice Boba Fett in Droids, where his daughter Kree Summer was Nisa in the Ewoks animated show.
Yeah, and Kree was also Penny in Inspector Gadget. In the
yes. Wow, I heard a lot of her in my childhood.
Yeah. Do you still have production notes saved from The Faithful Wookiee?
No, but what I have done is I've donated my archives to the University of Toronto, which is a large institution near where I live. And I'd have to go through looking to see if there are, because I basically did a huge, donation of all these notes. So,
wow.
But what I did come across not long ago was the contract with Lucasfilm.
Can you divulge any insight into the contract?
Yeah, they underpaid us, but it was well worth doing.
Well, yeah, because I feel like in your book, you kind of detail how because of that George Lucas connection, you were able to make a lot of deals and things with like the U.S. and distributors.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. When you work for somebody who's had the tremendous success that George Lucas was experiencing at that time, having done American Graffiti and then Star Wars and the sequels, you're working with somebody who everybody knows is top of the profession, and it reflects well on you that they've chosen you to work with because you're an independent company, and they'd have their choice of anybody. So that was great. And then the other great thing, which I reflect on in the book, is that because we got to work with Lucasfilm, we got to work with their great sound design people. Ben Burt, the best sound designer ever. We learned from them. We worked with Joe Johnson, great designer and director. We worked with top people throughout Lucasfilm, and that was informative and educational for our team. So we really got to plus our team. It's the usual thing of if you're working with great people, you learn. We were able, and one of the things that we had to overcome being in Toronto was that we weren't in LA, where the industry was largely nestled in LA. And so if you worked in LA, you often would get to work with some of these great people who were available to be hired on a project. But we were in a city that at the time didn't have either an animation industry nor a film industry or television industry. So we were kind of having to build ourselves, and it's always great to have mentors who help you and who share what they know. And then everybody just rises to the occasion because of that.
Yeah, Lucasfilm is the gift that keeps on giving. Did Disney Plus reach out to you when they were going to release the story of the Faithful Wookiee on Disney Plus, or did it just show up and you were surprised like the rest of us?
I was surprised like the rest of us, but it was already on YouTube, right? But YouTube has become the place where everything is this. The very first animation that I produced was letters for Sesame Street in the first year of Sesame Street. And some of those letters are on YouTube. I mean, go figure. I didn't put them on. I don't know who puts this stuff up there.
Well, people who were enterprising like you, Richard, who had a video tape recorder plugged into your TV.
I've got a vault of VHS tapes, which every once in a while I'll digitize. Like, I'll put this up on YouTube. Maybe I should contact the creators, but how do you sometimes it's very hard to follow the trail to
sometimes
the creators.
The companies don't exist anymore.
Right.
Things like that. Yeah.
That's right. I have films or TV shows that I've made where the companies that ended up with it because they bought so and so bought so and so who bought so and so who bought so and so who bought so and so, and the company that ended up with it doesn't know that title, doesn't know they have it,
Wow.
And that was one of the problems in doing the book, was sometimes getting stills just because people don't have their stills anymore. But now people have accumulated so much that they didn't keep those things, right? And they didn't always digitize everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot is lost in the treasure trove.
Yeah, unfortunately. When it was aired, the Star Wars Holiday Special, and it didn't get the reviews that Lucasfilm was hoping for, but the one thing that everyone loved was the story of the faithful Wookiee. How did that make you feel at that time?
Well, we felt great that we felt great about what we delivered, right? We made a cartoon that we liked, George liked. We thought fans would like it, right? So, we had come from the right place, which probably supports George's stepping out there and hiring this little known company that was just, in its early days to do this important project. So I felt great about it.
Then later on, you approached George Lucas about securing the rights to distribute The Faithful Wookiee theatrically, and the idea was to include it in an anthology science fiction feature with Nelvana's other holiday specials like A Cosmic Christmas, The Devil and Daniel Mouse, Romeo and Julie 8, the title which I love, and Intergalactic Thanksgiving. So after getting the rights, you pitched the idea to distributors, and they didn't go for it. Why?
I don't understand it. To me, it was such a logical idea, and maybe I made a mistake and I should have found, one of the independent distributors that would have understood it. But I went to the majors. I went to Fox, who obviously had Star Wars rights, but they had given me the rights to do this through Lucas. And they didn't want to do it. And I went to all the other big studios. Nobody wanted to do it. I found it mystifying. But again, I'm not sure. Everybody knew Star Wars was big, right? But I don't think they understood how big, right? And the impact on, kids, society, where filmmaking was going to go. But in any case, it's one of the disappointments in my life. And as you know from reading the book, I'm not afraid to talk about the low points as well as the high points.
Right. Yeah. You really learn a lot from your book. And it's so fascinating to read. It's not only just about animation or what you guys are doing, but it's very much a business book as well. You can learn a lot about business. Anyone in business school should be reading your book, I think.
You are the holiday special king. This is such a phenomenal idea. It boggles the mind why no one would go for this. Did you ever try to revisit this? Because all these holiday specials that you've produced with the Faithful Wookiee, this is leaving money on the table.
I don't think we'd get the rights to distribute the Faithful Wookiee today.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
In a way, it was an amazing stretch for George to get Fox to give us those rights, right? Because it was big for him to do it. But then, studios just don't do these things. It just isn't the way that the movie studio business works. So, it's a lot. It's in the category of lost opportunities. Neverland.
Ouch! Ouch! This hurts me not having seen this.
Yeah, no kidding.
Now, I was excited to read your chapter about Ewoks and droids. Let's jump ahead to that.
Sure.
Can you walk us through the journey about meeting with George or ABC about continuing the Star Wars saga, and what the guidelines were?
Yeah. So ABC was, obviously thrilled to get the rights to the first Star Wars cartoon for Saturday morning. It was great for them. And we had been working with ABC. We worked with them on Care Bears and My Pet Monster before we did Star Wars. So we were acceptable to them. And, but again, they encouraged Lucasfilm to talk to all the big players. And so Hanna-Barbera was competing for it. Deke was competing for it. And trying to think of whether there was anybody else. But in any case, a few of us were competing. But we had the inside track because we had worked well with George before and had maintained a relationship through the period in between. And ABC wanted to make sure that we went a little more Saturday morning in the style as compared to Mobius, right?
Okay.
So we softened the look a bit to make it a little more appealing to Saturday morning. But the the biggest problem area was each of these Saturday morning networks had what are called standards and practice divisions, where there's an office of somebody whose responsibility is to make sure the network isn't sued, or if the network is sued, they have a defense. So big issues at the time were imitative action. You couldn't show on Saturday morning an action that if kids imitated it, they would hurt themselves or other people. So that makes any of the action scenes very difficult to actually execute.
Like you can't clonk someone on the head or...
How did Roadrunner ever get through? Or Looney Tunes, where they're shooting people in the face with a 12-gauge shotgun?
No, but they recut them. So the versions that were on Saturday morning were usually edited heavily. So, and that was on ABC. But in any case, that became, so our guns had to be, looked like toasters or vacuum cleaners. You had to make weapons look not like weapons, right?
Like household items.
Yeah, that's so funny. Because, I mean, Ewoks themselves are, yes, they're like little adorable teddy bears, but they're adorable teddy bears that are murder bears because they were actually going to eat humans.
What? They've got to defend their home territory. It makes sense. Teach kids that kind of lesson.
Yeah, no, not on Saturday morning. So that was the hardest thing. And having Lucasfilm, as the owner of Star Wars, obviously made a huge difference because they fought with the network. But we did lose a lot of the battles on weapons and a bunch of things that I think made it hard to do the show. The show really makes sense when it was done for cable, which happened later with Clone Wars, because cable didn't have the same standards and practice rules. Cable wasn't just on in the morning for kids, it was for everybody. So you could basically make the show closer to what it would be like if it was a Star Wars production. And that was our biggest impediment. And then we had really good writers. We had,
Paul Dini.
Yeah, Paul Dini and Flint Dilley and Peter Sauter and Dan Smith. So, those were like at least 4 writers that were really good working on the show. And there were more people who came on. I think Cliff and Alana came on in the second season of Ewoks.
And Joe Johnston came in to direct some Droids episodes. I think I'm thinking about Ben Burt, who directed some episodes, right?
Okay. Ben was all over the production in terms of providing us with, advice for the sound and, sound stems to use. And it was just a great allies in making the show as good as possible.
How often would it happen that you would hear some sounds that Ben Burt would have, and then maybe you would write a scene kind of based on the sounds that he had?
It was more like he, because he'd have the scripts, he would basically say, the Munyips, you should do the sound kind of like this. But he was working with our sound guys and using them because, remember, he was still working on the next Star Wars movie. Mm-hmm. And had other responsibilities, at Lucasfilm. And so he was more mentoring our sound guy, saying, try doing this way, try that, here's some ideas,
I was very excited to hear that Nelvana was doing Ewoks and Droids because I'd known them from the holiday special. As a kid, I was always about the credits. And seeing that name associated with Ewoks and Droids, it just made sense that this was a continuation of the Star Wars saga, which really drew me closer to Ewoks and Droids. Now, you say in your book that you couldn't do cliffhangers because ABC's standards and practices forbade children's shows from ending episodes this way. How come?
Well, that again was just standards and practices. So the theory was that it was kind of unfair to children to leave them hanging because they have to wait a week till the next episode. And, it would be an unfair way to get them to tune into the show, to get them hooked on the show, so to speak, to use, other terminology. But
well, ABC must have hated The Empire Strikes Back then.
No, but it wasn't just ABC. It was all the 3 networks had the same rules, right? One wasn't easier or better than the other. So they all had agreed on the kinds of rules, and it really had to do with litigation where they'd been sued and they didn't want to be sued.
But someone has sued for like getting a kid hooked on a show?
Yeah. I mean, some point, we're talking about, 40 years ago, right?
But it sounds so 2024. People just blow up over the small. My child's got to wait 7 days for the conclusion of this. Where are my lawyers?
No, but now you've got binging, you've got streaming, you've got on demand. Look, we've now evolved to what is probably the ultimate viewing mechanism, streaming, right? Because you have this great unlimited shelf space, so lots and lots of shows, right? You can walk away, start something, come back, and a month later pick up where you left it, right? And it's kind of the golden age of production and distribution.
Okay.
Now, another head spiraling thing I read in your book was that ABC did not like the theme song to Ewoks Season 1, the classic E-E-E. Once again, why?
It was too rootsy for them. They didn't think kids would like it. It wasn't soft enough because they had bought Ewoks thinking that it was for little girls, but we know the disconnect because they were warriors, right? The Ewoks.
Yeah.
And Taj Mahal was not who ABC would have picked to do the theme song, right? But that was who George picked.
Okay.
And it did present production problems because again in the book I tell the story of how we're waiting for Taj Mahal to finish the song. So he sends us a rough demo that's not a finished piece of work. And we like it and we go with it and George likes it and that's what's important. And but we have to go finish it and we keep asking him to send us, the work with its what's the word for it? In a polished version, right? And he doesn't, and we're now in the weekend before we go to air, right? So we've got a week to finish this thing. Taj is in Hawaii and has a little 8-track studio in Hawaii, and it's a shack. And basically, I fly out with one of the Lucasfilm producers, and we are meeting Taj there to finish it, but Taj doesn't show up.
Oh, no.
And now it's a few days later, and we got 4 or 5 days to get the soundtrack done so it can be in the show. We have the idea that maybe we can sweeten the song by getting local singers. Can we find them in this little island? And his engineer who was there told us which hotel to go to, and there were some Hawaiian, shaped singers who had beautiful melodic voices. So we brought them in to do the chorus of that We Are the E-E-Ewoks to smooth it out and to do what the network was asking us to do. When we're about finished recording with the local singers, Taj walks in, very cool, chill, and says, "Let me hear that." And then he hears it. He says, "Yeah, I like that." And then he re-records his vocal because it was just a demo. And then we're done. And then we just remix. But and then it gets to the studio in time for being put on the show, but just with like almost no time on hand.
Maybe that was Taj's secret way of if I wait to the last minute, you can submit it and they can't say anything about it at that point. Perfect idea. Our good friend Mickey Herman, who says to say hello to you.
Oh, I say hello to Mickey. She's great.
She's been on. Yeah, she really is. She's been on the show many, many times, giving us behind-the-scenes stories about Ewoks and droids and holiday special. And she went on about how great Taj Mahal was and how much he loved working with him. And I thought he was just he had a primitive sound to that Ewok theme song, which they so lost in episode 2.
You mean season 2?
Season 2, yes.
Yes, because the network hated the song. They hated the We Are the E-E. And frankly, I think of it as one of the more, I've done a lot of theme songs that I think are interesting for cartoons, but that's, in my top 10, We Are the E-E-Ewoks.
Aww. What? Okay, what's your top song?
The Care Bears Countdown is one of them.
Aw, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and Droids.
The Beetlejuice theme song, without words.
Is Droids up there?
Yeah, Droids has really grown on me. At first, I wasn't sure. Like when I first heard the Droids song, I wasn't sure, but it was Stuart Copeland from The Police, so you knew it was good. That it was had great talent behind it.
Yeah, that's a great trivia question we have in our Skywalking trivia. Well, say the words to the Droids theme song and see if people know it. And most times people are like, I know, where have I heard that before? Where have I heard that before? And then when you get a singer in the audience who tries to sing it out, it's like, oh, is that Droids?
Stepping softly in a danger zone. No weapon in my hand.
They work it out, and it's the funniest thing just to see the evolution of their thought process.
Yeah.
And what is Mickey doing now, by the way?
This year on her birthday, last March, we all went to Disneyland together.
Yeah.
And we got the
great.
chance to see her going to Galaxy's Edge for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, she's great.
Now, you in your book, I really noticed that you built in a lot of mentoring at Nelvana Studio. So I wanted to know, did you learn that from Lucasfilm, or did you instinctively know to do that, or did someone give you that advice?
So we started to have mentoring when we were just starting Nelvana. So we started Nelvana, as I mentioned, in Toronto when there was no film industry, no animation industry. And the producer, who was the local producer of Rocket Robin Hood, which was a 70s cartoon, but who went bankrupt doing it, maybe it was a 60s cartoon, late 60s. And he taught us how to budget. He gave us advice for a bunch of things and hired us for a few gigs. And basically his mentoring was really helpful. We were just starting out. We had nobody to look to how to do things. And it just gave us confidence to go ahead and do it ourselves. And then, Jamie Kellner was the next mentor who had picked up the distribution rights to Cosmic Christmas and distributed it throughout America. And Jamie became a friend and a mentor and let me sit on his couch and hear how he cleared all these stations to run the show, right? And how he talked to the advertisers. So I learned a lot from him. And then George was the next mentor that we had, who really was very, free and open with his time and giving advice. And it was just great. So then what you learn is, you have to pay it back, right? So you've got to, develop young talent. You've got to, help them get to the next step, even if they're going to go off and start their own competitive studio. It's all about building something together that's bigger than one company.
That's great advice.
It's why I call the book Animation Nation.
Ah, okay. Yeah, because it's not just about Nelvana. I mean, you've started up like 3 different companies at this point. Well, can we dial back to the Care Bears? The Care Bears movie. This is something that is very near and dear to me. My favorite Care Bear is Cheer Bear, because I would use her to cheer everyone up. When my grandpa died when I was 4, and I just remember it was Thanksgiving holiday, and everyone was wandering around so solemn and somber, and I was 4, so I didn't really understand, what was going on. So I had my Cheer Bear, and I would go around and people, cheer up, Cheer Bear's here. So I just wanted to know, what is your favorite Care Bear? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, so my favorite Care Bear was Tenderheart. He was the hero. He drove a lot of the stories, but I loved all the Care Bears. I loved Secret Bear. I loved, Grumpy. They all had and Hugs and Tugs. Who could not love Hugs and Tugs? But the Care Bears movie was written by Pete Sauter, who was one of the writers on Droids.
Oh, cool. Wow. Yeah, and you had mere months to do an entire animated feature. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
About the steps, how this normally would take 2 years to produce an animated feature, but they said, okay, we need it in 4 months. Just for the rough cut, right?
6 months, I think. But the point is, we had very little time. And part of that was that they had an end date in mind, because the toy company was releasing the toys. So you had to have the movie in theaters. And there was at the time a interesting process where there couldn't be what they call blind bidding. So the distributors had to have a chance, the exhibitors had to have a chance to see the movie in progress or finished. But you had to show them something. You couldn't just make them book the theaters. And then you couldn't just show up at the last minute with a movie because theaters got booked months ahead. So we had to screen the unfinished work several months before we finished, where there was storyboard and pencil test and some color, everything in a different stage. And that was one of the problems that Star Wars had run into. So I don't know how much you know about the original release of Star Wars, but it was one of the first movies that was subject to this anti-blind bidding rule. And so when the exhibitors, who are the theater owners, when they saw Star Wars for this blind bidding purpose, they saw a movie where people were talking to characters that weren't visible because the animation or the special effects hadn't been finished. People had wooden swords. The ships weren't moving perfectly because they hadn't been cleaned up. And what happened was the big Fox movie at the time was supposed to be The Other Side of the Mountain Part 2. Other Side of the Mountain Part 1 had been a big hit. So there were, 1,000 screens of The Other Side of the Mountain Part 2. And Star Wars had lineups. Nobody went to see The Other Side of the Mountain Part 2. And the theaters that had The Other Side of the Mountain Part 2 said, you guys have this Star Wars, and we're hearing from the theaters that have it that it's huge. And so Fox had to make prints overnight within days so that the theaters could be switched over from the one movie to the other. And so labs all around the world were busy making Star Wars prints because the phenomena was so huge, and it went viral, right? It was like a viral thing. And there's a great marketer behind it. And I don't know if you've done any show about him, but Charlie Lippincott.
Charlie Lippincott, yes. Oh, yeah.
So Charlie became a friend and advisor over the years. But his story is amazing because he was the one who came up with the marketing of going to the comic book conventions and the fan conventions and building up a following and the wanna see.
Right.
Yeah, we're good friends with Craig Miller, who worked under Charlie Lippincott, and he took over for The Empire Strikes Back and has told us tremendous stories behind the scenes about marketing The Empire Strikes Back and how Charlie had mentored him into this way to publicize and promote movies to the audience, which is you go to science fiction conventions, that is the audience.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
No, the guy was brilliant. Charlie did the marketing for Black Stallion, which was a surprise hit, and Alien, among other things.
Wow.
What did Charlie teach you?
So he taught me the importance of going to where the audience is, going to the conventions, the conferences, looking for, new projects at these, conferences and conventions, and how to build up a fan base and to do it brick by brick, steadily, and way in advance, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, now they do that all the time. I mean, San Diego Comic-Con is taken over by the movie industry now.
Coming soon, 2031.
Yeah. Well,
it's true.
Yeah. Well, I would love to fast forward to the 2010s, and this is when you saw an opportunity to claim your company's pirated content on this burgeoning site called YouTube. And you mentioned in your book that the in-house lawyers at the company and executives were reluctant to claim that pirated content that others were stealing and posting. And I wanted to know why, because why was that?
So there's several things. One is that the internet content was governed by COPA, C-O-P-A, and these were rules and regs that had been imposed on producers, particularly children's producers, because there were rules for children's television. We were talking about the standards and practice rules before, and so some of these lobby groups wanted to regain some control through streaming. So you weren't supposed to have commercials in preschool programming.
Oh.
And preschool was where most of the viewership was. The second reason people didn't want to do it is TV networks controlled the advertising that went in. So if you were on Saturday morning, you weren't going to have an advertisement for smut, right? You weren't going to have an advertisement that wasn't aimed at the target audience that was, adult, right? But that could happen on streaming, right?
Oh.
And it did happen. So, those were reasons that, like, the marketers and the lawyers in pretty much every major studio. So whether you were Disney, Nickelodeon, or Cartoon, you weren't claiming these pirated things. In the beginning, all of the major studios would just request that the programming be taken off. And then, like whack-a-mole, somebody else would put it up, right?
Right.
So we had just bought a large library. So we had built our company Cookie Jar on the back of the Cinar Library and the Deke Library. And we had a lot of content, and we wanted to monetize and needed to because we were in the middle of the 2008 financial meltdown. So we were in crisis. So we had to figure out how we were going to make money. And so together with my other partners, we decided to just not listen to our lawyers or marketers and just do it. And we did it. And in the first year, it was kind of like maybe we made $800,000. The next year, we made $4 million. The following year, we made $10 million from just all this content. And then we started to replace pirated copies with our own, but the monetary compensation was the same, whether it was somebody else's pirated version or our version. But
right.
Replace them. And eventually, within a few years, it was worth $20 million a year to be what you could make on YouTube at that time. So, it was well worth doing because we had, spent a lot of money building up our library, right? And we had this great library that included Arthur and Caillou and Strawberry Shortcake and Care Bears and Inspector Gadget and lots of, great shows.
That is utterly fascinating because I know when we upload content to YouTube, there's a little button that says, "Is this for kids?" And if you click yes, then it sends you to a whole different like advertising area, which we never click yes because our content is for adults. But so like YouTube has actually has stuff and measures in place so that the advertising is correct for whoever, the age range.
So they were successfully attacked by I think FTC or FCC, one of them. I think FTC. And they had to pay a fine that I can't remember if it was like close to $1 billion because of, but to them, to Google, that's like chump change, I mean, we have to be relative about money. Yeah, they were forced to create a more kid-friendly environment, but that reduced the money that you could make from kids on YouTube directly, unless you let it go to the non-kids section where you can monetize them.
Okay.
Wow, your book is like a bible of the awesome TV series we had as kids to grown-ups to just this stuff that
this business
I would never
focus,
know about YouTube or the back end or all these standards and practices. So it was a really, really fun read. But another part that I really enjoyed was the part about the doodle bops, which was based on the Monkees in A Hard Day's Night, which is very ironic since the Monkees was influenced by A Hard Day's Night. We're huge Monkee fans over here.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about the doodle bops?
Prior to doing the doodle bops, as I was leaving Nelvana back in 2002, I think a year earlier, we had been asked as a favor to the Australian Broadcasting Corporation to help bring the Wiggles to North America. And so we arranged for their videos to be sold to Disney Channel, and we got them a video deal, and we might have arranged their first couple of concerts. So we did that. And then I saw how well the Wiggles had done, and I loved the Wiggles. And so decided that I'd do my own version, but one that was a little more story-oriented, because the Doodle Bops really are about that band and getting on the bus and going to the gig and solving their problems so they could do the gig, right?
It sounds like the Monkees.
Yeah. So, we were I would say it's definitely homage to the Monkees and to Hard Day's Night. And it's got a very helter-skelter sort of editing style where sometimes, they're driving their bus through an animated minefield. Sometimes they're, flying through the sky with the bus. So to some degree, it was also influenced by the Magic School Bus, which I also produced. So
Yeah.
everything you do kind of you learn from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, it's
And
like
you're
Easter
big
eggs on
learning.
Easter eggs.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Doodle Bops did about 2 years or 3 years of touring around the United States. They did 100 cities a year, and we're a very successful group.
Yeah.
And a warning to anyone watching and listening to this right now, once you hear that theme song, forget it. It's in your head forever. But it's a fun theme song.
Carl Lennox, who wrote the song, was great. By the way, that reminds me, the other song that I like that Carl worked on was Roly Poly Oly.
Oh, wow.
Oh, boy, there's so much great content in your book. Once again, I can't say that enough times, and we don't want to give away the farm here. So let's wrap it up there, and gotta thank you once again for giving us a few hard copies and digital copies, of which we're gonna give away to the Skywalkers. But for anyone who can't win or doesn't win the book, where else can they get your book?
They can get it on Amazon.com or BarnesandNoble.com or their favorite bookstore by asking them to order it if they don't have it on stock.
All right, so Animation Nation, How We Built a Cartoon Empire is pretty much available anywhere you can get your books. Now, this last summer, you did Comic-Con in San Diego. Do you have any more conventions coming up where you're doing a panel?
So I did the Fan Expo in Toronto. We showed the Faithful Wookiee. I got a license from Lucasfilm to show it, which was great. And no, I'm doing some other speaking things as in colleges and things, and looking for the next opportunity. I'm hoping that the Tokyo Star Wars Con will be it.
Okay, great.
Because it's the other side of the world.
Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us all these great stories.
And thank you so much, Richard and Sarah.
And
you're welcome.
Happy Life Day.
Chewbacca suspected all along there was something bad about Boba.
How did you know, Chewie?
May I quote directly, sir? He just didn't smell right.
Well, let's get off this galactic raindrop.
Captain Kazan, Starlog Entry 3241, signing off. May the Force be with you.
That wraps up episode 492 of
Skywalking Through Neverland.
We want to thank Michael Hirsh for coming on the show and for giving us copies to pass along to you. So Skywalkers, make sure to stay tuned to our social media where we will be giving you directions on how to get those books, Animation Nation.
And we want to thank all you Skywalkers for coming on every single week, watching our videos, playing our new trivia games, sharing on things we want to share. Everything that we do, we always want to include you, and you always show up. So we want to thank you so much for that. And I want to say once again, let's get to 9150 for YouTube subscribers next week, okay? That means just five subscribers.
Let's do it. And you can also find us on social media in between shows at Skywalking Pod. Look for things coming up for Skeleton Crew. There's going to be some reels from the creators of that show and the kids on the show. So that's going to be very exciting as we lead into Skeleton Crew, the new Star Wars
live
TV
action
series.
Yeah, December the 3rd.
Yes.
Now, do you have things that you want to share? Well, we do. So join us every Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube as we share things we have done this last week. We just recorded our things we want to share for this week. We shared Life Day. We shared Mustafar Comes to LA. We shared Sarah's race at Disney, her 4 a.m. race, which is why she only got 8 hours of sleep this week. tons and stuff. And as always, we want to hear from you, Skywalkers. Do you have things that you want to share? Merchandise you just got? Anything? A story you want to share? Anything? Please come on and share with us.
Now, are you interested in our books? Autographed copies of Today in Star Wars History, parts 1 and 2 are available. Also, Skywalking Through My Fandom, the interactive notebook. These are all available at skywalkingthroughneverland.com/book. We only have a few of the hardcover versions of Today in Star Wars History left. So these make great gifts for the holidays for the Star Wars fan in your life. So make sure to check out skywalkingthroughneverland.com/book.
We just start pushing the holiday gift giving idea.
That's right.
Nicely done. Now, do you want to support Skywalking Through Neverland in other ways? Well, consider supporting us through the Skywalking Force, which is our Patreon. The Skywalking Force has access to bonus content in the form of our Zoom discussions on Disney Plus shows. You get things in the mail. You get some live streams, and this bonus content begins at only $5 a month. Is that a typo? Just $5 a month? Whoa. Head over there to skywalkingforce.com and have a look at all the options. And thank you to those who are already part of the Skywalking Force.
Now, we want to thank our sponsor, Small World Vacations, for their continued support. Are you thinking of a trip to a Disney park or a Disney cruise? Well, or even a Universal park. They also do Universal Vacations as well. You can fill out a Get a Quote form at smallworldvacations.com today. Their vacation planning service is free of charge, so check it out and tell them Skywalking Through Neverland sent you.
Now, we are part of the Skywalking Network,
Skynet,
where you can find other great shows like Talking Apes,
the Max Effects Podcast,
the Neverland Clubhouse,
Totally Tell Me Everything,
Star Warsologies,
and the YouTube shows Collectopolis and
Today in Star Wars History. Now, don't forget to stick around for bloopers and other fun bits that didn't make it into the show. And
always remember
to have a happy life day and stir, whip, whip, whip.
Stir. And
Neverland on Alderaan.
We're going live again because we got to record our wraparounds.
Yes.
Yay. So thank you who are joining us. Oh, and Richard's retooling the notes already. So already there's going to be changes.
Pardon me, I'm going to sneeze.
Oh, no problem. Take a moment.
Okay, we'll do this.
Maybe I won't sneeze. Let's see. Hang on.
The rest of it was still really funny. And we, as kids, we got a chance to see Carrie Fisher outside of Princess Leia. What else could she do?
Right.
She did one sketch as the Loud family. She was one of the Loud, her and Gilda Radner were the Loud sisters. Aww. I like that sketch. They were loud.
Tone it down. Tone it down, sweetie. All right, I'm getting punchy.
Me too.
We got to eat. Yeah. All right. Bye, Skywalkers. Thanks for joining us.
We've got one more show to record, and then we got to eat.
Yeah, okay.
Hey, look at those names to the left. They are part of the Skywalking Force, our Patreon.
Become a producer yourself and check out all the Disney Plus themed bonus content available depending on the level you subscribe.
Become a member of the elite Skywalking Force at skywalkingforce.com.